Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mystery Rift. I'm David Paulides. Today, we're going deep into the Northern California Sierra Nevadas for a case that is one of the most complex, disturbing, and frankly, heartbreaking in the entire history of unexplained disappearances. This case has haunted me for decades. It is the only story I have ever researched where 5 men vanished at the same exact time under conditions that defy every single law of logic and every ounce of common sense. We are talking about the Oroville 5. 5 men went to a basketball game, bought some snacks, and then they drove their car directly into a desolate, frozen abyss. What I'm about to share contains the core elements of a classic missing 411 case. A remote, high-elevation location, bizarre circumstance, and an ending that suggests an unimaginable, malevolent influence at work. The disappearance took place in the winter of February 1978. 4 of these 5 men were exceptionally vulnerable, relying completely on routine. These were 4 friends, all mentally disabled, who lived for their Special Olympics basketball team. They had a huge tournament the very next day. They had their jerseys laid out on their beds. They knew they had to be home. Jack Madruga was the driver. Ted Weiher lacked basic common sense. Bill Sterling, who hated the woods, had been badly bullied. And young Jack Hewitt, the most dependent, had never spent a single night away from home. And then there was the 5th man, Gary Mathias. He was the anomaly, sharp, an athlete, yet diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. He had a troubled past, but he was the one person who could walk out of almost anything, having once walked 500 miles across a state after escaping a facility. On February 24th, 1978, the 5 friends left Chico after their game. They stopped at the bear market. They were last seen, all together, smiling, with a bag of snacks. And then they simply ceased to exist. The parents were immediately frantic. 3 days later, the impossible happened. Jack Madruga's car, a 1967 Mercury Montego, was found. It was not on the highway. It was parked perfectly on a deeply rutted, isolated dirt road near the snow line, high up outside of Oroville. This was miles from any logical destination these men would choose. Inside, the snacks were gone. The car was in perfect working order, with a quarter tank of gas. The deputies noted something chilling. The undercarriage had almost no scratches. It was as if that vehicle had been lifted and gently placed in that desolate spot, not driven there. And all 5 men were gone, with only a few indistinct tracks leading up the mountain, into the blizzard that was beginning to move in. The official search was massive, facing deep snow drifts and zero visibility. After 3 weeks, they called it off. The families were left with a nightmare. Why would these men, who feared the dark and routine change, leave their warm, functioning car and march uphill into a snowstorm? This pattern, leaving a safe vehicle and marching into impossible terrain, is one we see repeatedly in missing 411 cases. We often find cases where victims walk to extreme high elevations, sometimes 5,000 feet or more. The car was found just at the base of this massive, rugged climb, in a place that seemed to be waiting for them. What force compelled them to go? Did Gary Mathias, the one with the troubled mind, convince them to follow him into what he may have perceived as a hidden place of safety? Or perhaps something far worse? 3.5 months of absolute silence. Then, in early June, the snow yielded a terrible truth. A derelict construction trailer was found near the Daniel Zink campground, nearly 20 air miles from the car. It took searchers hours to cut through the overgrowth to reach it. Inside, they found Ted Weiher, deceased, but tucked into a bed under 8 layers of sheets. He was severely emaciated, but he had survived for weeks on 31 cans of food found nearby. His cause of death was blood poisoning, likely from gangrene on his feet. And here is the factor that screams missing 411. His leather shoes were missing. They found Gary Mathias's tennis shoes inside the trailer, but Ted's nice leather shoes, essential for survival, were simply gone. This phenomenon of missing footwear is a dark signature in these disappearances, and it defies any conventional explanation. The bodies of Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling were later found 8 miles closer to the car, and Jack Hewitt was found near the trailer, his remains scattered. A heartbreaking confirmation, but Gary Mathias was never found. His shoes were there. The man who could walk 500 miles was the only one who didn't walk out of a 20-mile trap. Why did Ted Whiteher, who survived for weeks, remove his own shoes? Was it hypothermia leading to paradoxical undressing? Or was there a psychological trigger, something shared, that compelled them to discard their only protection against the cold? This scenario perfectly matches other high elevation cases where a competent individual disappears while the more vulnerable are left behind, often with their shoes missing. It's as if a predator took the strongest one last. We have a car placed in an impossible location. 4 vulnerable men marching 20 miles into a blizzard. 4 men found dead in a radius of baffling proximity. And 1 man, the strongest, the most athletic, who simply vanished without a trace. I believe that what these men encountered on that dark, snowy road was something that altered their perception, something that lured them into the wilderness. A cognitive dissonance, a disorienting effect that preyed specifically on their vulnerabilities. Was it a strange, malevolent entity native to the Sierra High Country that used Gary's fractured psyche to lure the group to their doom? We can only label it as an unexplainable, profound influence that left behind a perfect puzzle with the key piece Gary Mathias forever missing. The Oroville 5 is a horrific case that proves the wilderness holds dark secrets, and sometimes the only thing missing is an explanation.